Hey everybody, it's Marcia and welcome to the podcast. We have a special guest today. Stacy is actually out, and our friend and you're on a lot. We're a common friend here that's on the podcast. Amy is here today. Hey Amy.
Hey,
Thanks for
thanks for
coming
having
in.
me on.
Well, thanks for hunting at the last minute. Our sweet Stacy, her
I know.
boyfriend is struggling and in the hospital, and she's with him today, is where she needs to be. And so everyone listening, y'all send out some prayers for him as they're trying to
Mhm.
do some diagnostics and figure out what's going on with him. And we miss her and we love her. But I'm really grateful for Amy. I miss you, Amy. We just had a retreat. Our God and my girlfriend's retreat was it 2 weekends ago now? I guess
Something
so.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And Amy came down and she actually spent a week with me. So not just the retreat, we were together, but she was at the house for a week. And I have told so many people that everyone needs an Amy in their life for,
Aw.
for two reasons.
If
Number
anyone needs a personal assistant.
number one, yes, you are the best. I mean, we've talked about both being Enneagram nines. I don't know if you're a nine because you are together, girl. And I'm like walking around like a zombie, and you are like pointing me in the right direction. You were like, okay, what do we need to do? We need to get this done. We need to get this done. And I was like, thank God Amy is here.
Well, I think I was in a different position than you. I think I would have gone into kind of the mode that you were in if I was the one that was like running it and had to have so much brain stuff around everything. But because I was not really running it, I didn't have that extra pressure. So my brain was running pretty clear. And I kind of had I kind of know how you function. So it was
Mhm.
easy to assist you. And we were both dental assistants. So we know how to
That's
like
true. We were both.
map people's, we're supposed to know what's happening before it actually happens and have everything ready. So it was a
That,
joy to do it. It was a
oh
lot of
man,
fun.
I couldn't have done it without you. And also just having someone like, you saw me at my worst. I was a wreck. I'm like, I just need to go take a nap. And you were like, go take a nap. And I could hear you in there vacuuming my house. And I'm like, oh my God, she's amazing. But just to have a friend that knows you, I wrote a blog about that, about how good it is to just be able to be yourself with someone and like be known and know they love you. And you're just the best, Amy. Thanks so
Oh,
much.
I think we work really well together. And I
Yeah.
know that you need a certain amount of time and quiet time in
Hmm.
the morning. And I don't like to be as an Enneagram 9. And also just from my history of, trauma and stuff like that, I don't like to be a bother to people. So, I want it to be a good experience for you. And it was a really good experience for me. And I actually process emotions by doing stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes I'll take a nap. I do like a nap, but sometimes I just need to like get into the flow of something and that helps me a lot.
Oh, that's good. But are you a nine or are you an eight? Now, see where.
Okay. Well, that's what Stacy said. Stacy said, maybe you're an 8. She actually thought I was an 8 from the very beginning.
Really?
Um, I do have a little bit of a sarcastic side, and which I think is an 8 thing, although 9s can do it too. And I also do have a little burning sensation of anger below the surface, and that is definitely an 8 thing. So we were talking about that, you and I. You tend to maybe lean more towards like the 1, and I think I do have some 8
A lot of
things,
eight.
which is
Yeah.
good. But I was always told like all those 8 qualities, like the anger and the sarcasm and the debating and all that kind of stuff, like that wasn't really always encouraged in my home. So I wanted to
It
be
was
a good
kind of,
Christian girl.
yeah,
So
it was
I
shut down.
solidified those 9 qualities.
Yeah. Oh,
And
I
I do
know.
like being a 9.
There's a lot of nines and a lot of twos in Christian women, I can tell, because,
Yeah.
yeah, that's so funny. We have to do a whole episode on the Enneagram. We got to get Stacy on here. I don't think we've done a whole Enneagram episode on this podcast. I think we may have done it on the God of My Girlfriend's podcast, but not on this one. And a lot of people have gotten interested in Enneagram work lately, and so we should get our Enneagram expert
Yeah.
Stacy Wynn on here. We'll have to schedule that soon. We've got some really cool guests coming on. I'm really excited about it. And speaking of guests, we have some great guests on today. I'm so excited um, to have Brittany Tausen, or is it Tausen? Sorry, Brittany. It's probably Tausen. And Catherine Douglas, we call her Katie on here, to talk about their new book, which is called Love Your Neighbor, um, How Psychology Can Enliven Faith and Transform Community. And we got this book in the mail, and I started reading it. I started loving it, and we were going back and forth. We had the hardest time trying to schedule an interview with them. They would schedule, and then we would have to cancel, and then it was just back and forth. But I'm glad they hung in there with us, because we finally got some time to talk with them. And man, I love these two women. I love what they're talking about. I know you got to listen to the interview. I sent it to you
It's
earlier.
two of my favorite things is like, you know, spiritual, how God works, and also like how the mind works. I find it very fascinating. I often reference to like, oh, my brain.
Yeah.
And I'm very like aware of it. Like, oh, why did my brain just kind of like fritz out? Why is it so jazzed right now? Like, what is going on? And I think the fact that they paired them two together, it's really important. So I think your listeners are going to love this episode.
Me too. Me too. Because I think a lot of us, and I think this happens a lot in especially fundamental Christian culture. You know, I wasn't taught to think for myself. I wasn't taught to use my brain. I was taught to listen to the commands and obey, and then shut down,
Yeah.
and that's where I felt safe, right, for a long time. And so the thought that I could use critical thinking with things I was being taught, and like think, oh, that's not ringing true for me. And why isn't it ringing true? And let's do some research, and let's use my brain and figure this out. I mean, I shut that part of myself down for
I
years.
think it does a really big disservice. I know in the interview you guys talk about too, like when we struggle with, you know, behaviors, for example, and we think, you know, we were just taught like pray to the Lord and God will help you overcome all of these different things. And then, you know, she uses the example of like the bag of chips. And, you know, if you don't understand kind of like what's going on in your brain, you can pray it away all day long.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you end up in it. So I think it's really important to kind of understand that because it can become very discouraging and difficult when it comes to our relationship with God if we pray that we won't struggle with something and we just continue to struggle it. Whereas if we understand what our brain and what our body is doing,
Yeah.
we're better equipped to deal with ourselves, with our children, with our family. Like it
Yes.
just fascinates me.
Amen, sister. Yeah, me too. I almost got, when I got in college, I couldn't decide whether to get a music degree or a psychology degree. I've always been fascinated with that. And I went with music, and then I dropped out and got pregnant and got married.
But then you did music.
But then I did
And
music.
people say it to me all the time. You should become a therapist. You should become a counselor. You should do this. And you know what? I have to do my own psychological work on it. The school freaks me out. Like it just scares the heck out of me. And so it makes it just really difficult to learn when you're just like scared out of your mind.
Yeah. You ought to consider it. Maybe sometimes the thing that scares you the most is what you're
I
supposed to do.
know.
I know. I know. Well, let me
So
tell you,
hopefully we'll do this book as you were talking about maybe doing it as a God and my girlfriend's
I
book
I
study.
think so. I think it would be a really good one.
Yeah, I think it would be great discussion too.
Yeah, yeah. And they have a discussion guide and everything ready to go. So it's really good if people want to do it like in a group setting, which I think it's a really good one. It lends itself to great conversation, around
Mhm.
it. So, well, let me tell you guys a little bit about Katie and Brittany. They are both psychologists and writers whose work sits at the vital intersection of faith, mental health, and communal life. In their new book, Love Your Neighbor, they draw on psychological research, clinical insight, and lived experience to explore how love becomes most transformative when it is practiced with self awareness, humility, and emotional honesty. That's fresh. That's just refreshing, isn't it? Their work invites faith communities to move beyond abstract ideals of love and toward relational practices that foster healing, resilience, and genuine belonging. So, without further ado, thanks, Amy, for joining me for this little pre roll chat. And we'll have you back on soon, I know. And yeah, y'all stick around and listen to Stacy and I's conversation with Katie Douglas and Brittany Tausen. All right, we're back with Brittany and Katie. Ladies, thank you so much for being here. We're excited to talk to you.
Yeah.
Thanks for
It's
having
been a
us.
long time coming, so we're glad we worked out our scheduling and we're all together.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Well, as we get started today, we would just love for you to kind of introduce yourselves, just in terms of what you're doing today, where you are, where you're located, kind of what's happening in your world, just so people get a feel for you as we get started.
Well, I'm a associate professor at Seattle Pacific University. I'm a mom of 3 kids. I'm like the shuttler of to so many activities, and
I remember those days.
I'm at a place in my life where I'm like eating a lot of like frozen pizza and nachos for dinner. And but but it's like the weather is turning in Seattle, so we're all feeling pretty hopeful and happy with a bit of sunshine.
Thank you.
And I'm Brittany Tausen. I am an assistant professor of social psychology in the Honors College at Baylor. And we actually just recently moved to Texas. So I am a new Texan, and we are filming this at the time of Easter is just around the corner. Tomorrow is Good Friday. And so we're actually getting ready to invite our first guests into our new home. So we are frantically trying to furnish our new home. We are taking the camping table out, and we are putting a real dining table in, and just really excited to have people in our new space, in our new home.
Oh, those are
How
fun
lovely.
times. Yeah. Houston. My brother
Uh,
lives in Houston.
okay, yeah.
Yeah. A little
It's a
different weather than Seattle.
It is, although it was pouring rain today and it was hot. And I said to my students, well, two things. My car apparently has a leak in the sunroof, which is new news. I hadn't had it in the
Oh.
rain yet, so it doesn't cope with the rain super well. But also, I don't know how to handle hot rain. I've decided I don't have to
Mm,
dress for that because rain jackets don't breathe well. So
Hot
that's
rain.
the
mm-mm.
situation.
No.
Yeah.
I live in Florida. I do not own a rain jacket for that very reason.
Yeah,
It's,
hot
yeah.
rain is it's not great.
Ah, that's funny. Well, we when when we got a copy of your book, I was so excited to read it because um the merging of theology and psychology is something that I think is so important. And I think that sometimes people tend to just be an either or on that topic, right? And so I think Katie, you're the theology side and you're the psychology. So just tell us a little bit about like how you guys, found each other and decided to merge your strengths into this book.
I like the way you tell it, Brittany.
It's a great love story, mine and Katie's. I feel like we joke now that we've had like a child together in this book, in the sense that like it will live with us forever and we will always be connected no matter where we are.
Yeah.
But Katie and I actually both started at Seattle Pacific University the same year, and we were in our new faculty orientation together. And I remember Katie like so vividly because she had a newborn baby like strapped to her chest, and she was still just asking questions and so engaged and so thoughtful with all of the folks that were new faculty at that time. And I remember just thinking like, wow, like there is something about this person that I'm like completely captivated by, and I really would love to like know and be mentored by. And so I actually asked Katie to mentor me at the very beginning of our relationship, maybe within like the first like 4 to 6 weeks of meeting her. And that turned into a friendship. She married my husband and I, and then we just always were kind of in conversation about what we were doing and what we were interested in. And that first year that we were at Seattle Pacific, our school was actually hosting a tent city, which is a government sanctioned homeless encampment. It was called Tent City 3 on campus. And we were both really interested from our respective disciplines of how to engage well with Tent City 3 and also to help our students to love their unhoused neighbors more faithfully. And so Katie was approaching that with her students in her classroom, and I was approaching that from like the lens of like a psychological science, trying to say, I really appreciate and love the heart behind this practice, and I want to know if the impact of this practice is what we intend for it to be. So are our students really walking away from this experience with more positive perceptions of individuals experiencing homelessness, or might there be something about this experience that actually pushes students more in the direction of less neighbor love, more dehumanization? And so that's kind of one of the first times where we realize we're really interested in asking similar types of questions, and we're just approaching them from different disciplines. And so there might be ways that we can work together to have a richer understanding of how to engage our unhoused neighbors well.
Yeah. Well, so here you are, what you said, 4 years later.
4 years later from the book, it's about 10 years later from Tent City 3 being on campus. Yes. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
As you look back at the book and how you kind of navigated the study, what do you think you gained by combining psychology and theology? Like what, looking back now, what would you say is the major takeaway?
I think that one of the values of I would use the language of like interdisciplinary collaboration or like working together across disciplines is often disciplines like the academic world is set up to keep us away from each other. Like theologians talk to theologians and psychologists talk to psychologists. And even within psychology, there's social psychology and neuropsychology. There's like all kinds of stuff, right? Clinical psychology. At SP, we have 3 psychology programs that are all different. And then there's marriage and family counseling and psychology, you know? So the academic world wants to divide us from one another, and I think what I is really beneficial is oftentimes we care about the same things, but we're using language a little bit differently. So in the world of theology, we would talk about loving your neighbor or neighbor love, and how this kind of compassion and love and empathy toward other people is something that Jesus Christ wants for us. And sometimes it can just be that, like, God wants it for you. Now pray and try to do what you think would work the best. And as it turns out, there's a whole world of research around like, how do you actually like effectively love people, like in a way that maybe your feelings change about them, or how do your feelings turn into action, and how do we disrupt bad patterns or bring awareness to things in a way that then changes our behavior. And so if you're a Christian who actually wants to change your behavior, it actually takes more than wishful thinking. Like sometimes I can think to myself, I don't want to eat potato chips. I'm going to be a healthier person. But as it turns out, the patterns of my behavior and my choices way before I ever eat a potato chip actually determine my action later on. And so if we can intervene earlier, or set up our schedule differently, or set up our neighborhoods differently, or on both very small and large scales, that actually can help us be more loving in the way that we already want to be loving. It just gives us some tools to do that. And so I think there's this really beautiful synergy that can happen when you bring 2 fields together, where you say, oh my gosh, we're like totally talking about the same thing and caring about the same thing, but we're using different language. And because we're different, we sort of enrich the conversation. It becomes much more, you have a much bigger impact if you can kind of bring things together.
Yeah, I think just you using feelings and theology in the same sentence is pretty great, because so often we hear, emotions are bad, and, don't listen to your emotions, and just recognizing that, yeah, we do have emotions. They are God-given, and we have to steward them well.
Yeah, I think they're a source of knowledge. I mean, I don't know formally in the world of psychology, but like fear can help you make a choice that protects you, but fear can also be a form of racism, where you've been taught something that you don't need to be afraid of, but you've been taught to feel something incorrectly. So we can, with accurate information and new knowledge, actually sort of align our feelings with the way God wants us to feel toward people. Maybe we aren't supposed to feel afraid when we see someone who's homeless. Maybe we're supposed to feel compassion. And if that's the case, sometimes the biblical story can inspire us and help us know something, and then maybe the psychology around it, and maybe some research on our own, looking up real information, like, is this something I should actually be afraid of? Can counter kind of the mental tricks that our brain can play on us. And Brittany is a genius when it comes to saying, actually, there's a study about that. So the way our work life would go together is I'd say, oh, there's this thing. And Brittany would say, oh, there's this study. And then I'm like, oh, there's a Bible story that's actually like really interesting if you read it through this lens. So our work together was very collaborative, which was fun for me.
Yeah, one of the things Katie's highlighting that I love about this is like there's overlapping truths. So like resonant truths, like where theology and psychology are pointing you towards a similar truth. I think that's something to definitely pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're in conflict, I think we have to ask really thoughtful questions about like why are they in conflict? Why are they pointing us to two different things? And might it be the nuance in the way that we're approaching it, or might it be something else that we need to be able to pinpoint to really understand why these two fields, if all truth is God's truth and psychology is a way of knowing the truth and theology is a way of knowing the truth, they should be leading us to overlapping truths. And where they're not, there's something to really wrestle with there that I think is important. And so I love that, we have that opportunity to examine those overlapping truths. But also I think that for psychologists, we often are like grappling for like we don't have a moral authority, like we aren't normative in that way. And so one thing that theology really lends, I think, to our discipline is we are focused on like doing what works, but not necessarily setting the trajectory where is correct to set the trajectory. And so I often talk about like we want to do what's right, and we get that from theology, but we also want to do what works, and we can get that, I think, more from psychology. So I like the way those pair together in that way.
Oh, I love that. I love that idea of like if they're not both pointing towards the same thing, then we need to analyze why.
Yeah, wrestle with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and wrestle with it. Why? Katie, you mentioned fear a minute ago. And I know that you guys suggest in your book that like the issue sometimes when we don't want to love our neighbor well is not belief, it's this resistance. And I think fear is probably part of that resistance. So when we talk about like common psychological barriers for people that keep them from wanting to love their neighbor, I mean, like political differences, in the political divide, or even theological differences. For some reason these days, everything is like, if you're not on my team, you're my enemy, right? And even though the Bible says love your enemy too, not just love your neighbor, but we'll get into that later maybe. What do you think are the most common psychological barriers that people have to overcome in order to see everyone as their neighbor? Because really, everyone is your neighbor, right?
Yeah, I'm going to toss this one to Brittany. I think she's going to be able to answer this better than I will.
Well, I think you're hitting on one really important one, which is like this in-group, out-group dynamic, right? So like we like what we're familiar with. We're more familiar with our in-groups. And so that dynamic is a really important one that we need to understand, like the psychological barriers to even extending the same level of like kindness or mental representations of out-groups. So one of my favorite like research like areas looks at how we overly simplify outgroup members. Like we think they're all the same, right? It's like this idea of outgroup homogeneity, which is like all of them are the same, but there's all this complex and this nuance in my own in-group. And so there's like this oversimplification in the way that we kind of mentally depict other people in a one-dimensional framework, which I think doesn't help us to represent like their full scale of situational factors that are driving their behavior, their full kind of complex emotional experiences. And so this one-dimensional perspective on other people, I think, can be really problematic. But connected to what y'all were talking about with fear, we talk quite a lot in the book about the scarcity mindset. And I think this is one that really drives a lot of our complications with loving our neighbors well also. And it's just this idea that when we feel like we have less or we don't have enough, that we start to enhance our biases towards other people. And so those out-group, like in-group dynamics get exaggerated in these instances of scarcity. And I think that we are surrounded by a lot of narratives that are telling us our resources are scarce. And oftentimes those narratives are pretty disconnected from the reality of how much all of us have relative to like the majority of the people in the world. And I've said this before, but I think it's true that, Christians are uniquely positioned to say, even if it was true that resources are really, really scarce for me, still I have a God who loves me, who promises to take care of me. Still, I should be able to overcome these biases towards other people and this fear of not having enough. And so I would like to see that like Christians are uniquely capable of overcoming that fear of scarcity because we have a faith in a God who loves us and a generous God who's already made all of the sacrifices for us and has already given us more than we need. So those are two that come to mind, but gosh, there's lots in the book that we unpack in terms of that, um, overconfidence in ourselves, and an unwillingness to consider other perspectives is another one that comes to mind pretty quickly, but lots of things going on there.
Yeah, Marcia and I were going to take a stark right turn. Not really. I'm kind of, but we were just talking about the conversation that Paula Kane had with Trump, and referencing and comparing God and Jesus's suffering to Trump and Trump's suffering, and we were talking about that just because theology and how theology is used in the world. It's something to pay attention to, especially when it's used in a way that can be manipulative or controlling or creating a narrative that isn't really scriptural. So that it's interesting how the othering of can be tied back to, and it's ironic that it can be tied back to scripture, in these ways. And I'm just interested if you have anything to help us process this.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've been saying, like kind of one of my mantras maybe for the last 6, 7, I don't know how many administrations ago, 12 years, what are we into here? But is that like the way to address bad theology is not atheism, but good theology. And the word theology means God talk. Like theo is God, ology is like philosophy, talk about, philosophical things, or it's the way we talk about God. And it's important to remember like all scripture is interpreted. And so anytime we read something, we're kind of making meaning of it. And the process of making it meaningful is when we connect it to our lives. And so there have been moments in history when like Hurricane Katrina was blamed on an act of God's judgment on the people in this sinful city. And other people said, no, it's an act of God's judgment for the people who voted not to fix the dam that flooded and killed all these people. But both are saying, oh, it's God's judgment. Well, maybe it's just random, like we want life in the world to be meaningful. And right now, politically, people have been made aware that, and this started with Jimmy Carter, that religion is a very strong political motivator for people. When he called himself an evangelical, they realized this is a voting bloc. And so suddenly the Republican Party, not the Democrats, they could have picked it up too, but the Republican Party picked this up and said, we're going to appeal to the religious life of these voters who tend to be Republican to motivate them to vote. And so throughout history, we have this theological kind of presence within politics that appears in different ways. But now there's some really significant things that are being said publicly that are reinterpreting even our political history. So to say, Caroline Levitt came out and said recently that this country was a Christian, Judeo-Christian founding. And the irony is so deep. For any historian of American history knows this is not a Judeo-Christian founding. This was a founding to protect religious freedom because people felt oppressed by a religious government. And so these moments, all of them matter when like Caroline Levitt comes out and says, in reply to like, what do you think about the Pope's statement about Pete Hegseth's prayer for violence and war? And she she re-narrates, she's a story turner, and she'll say, well, we always have prayed for our soldiers. And she's not really addressing it. She's making it sound very American to pray for soldiers. Of course, we would all pray for soldiers for safety. But if you're a Christian, you're going to pray for peace because Jesus teaches about peacemaking. He doesn't teach about war. So this is where I think theology I'm like, this is my appeal. Everybody come apply for seminary and come study with me. To actually study scripture and say, read for yourself. What do you see Jesus teaching? What do you see him saying? Who is compared to Christ? We're called to come and die, take up your cross, follow me. Where do you find me? Serve the poor. Where's the widow and the orphan? And it's not, where is Christ among you? Your president. That is never the parallel that's made. And so it's really tricky and confusing when people who maybe you've trusted someone a long time, who's a pastor, who's a woman you admire, who suddenly is in this, White House position to talk about and the president in a theological way. And then it's to kind of compare him to Christ. I find that very dissonant for me as a Christian to say, like, wow, like that is not at all how, when I think about interpreting my relationship to Jesus or someone, when the people are lifted up who are most Christ-like, it's those who have given or sacrificed or who serve. In the Holy Week, this is Holy Week right now. That's what it's all about. The law is love. The type of king we have is the king who serves, who washes feet. And so, and if you wonder, can you earn salvation? No, it's grace coming to you, right? So like, if you read the scriptures, you'll find like that then when this happens publicly and you're like, wait a minute, I'm a Christian too. And this is where it's tricky with in-group, out-group dynamics, because you want to start saying, well, I'm not that type of Christian.
Right. We were
just talking about this.
But so you want to distance yourself, but I think we should, in these moments, not create in-group, out-group dynamics, but say, this is a theological challenge, and everyone can be a theologian. We can all participate in this conversation. We can all read the Bible and talk about what does kingdom mean for Jesus? What's king language? How's that used in the Bible? Who's the savior? In what is an appropriate way to compare yourself to Christ? Because I think we're called to be like Jesus. And so I don't think the woman who talked in that way was wrong, that all people are called to be like Jesus, but we need to know what Jesus is like and then say with humility, like, I'm on my way. I want to grow and change, but I'm not there yet. And so I don't know, that was it's been really interesting as a theologian to watch all this public theology happening. There's so much to say. Yeah. Sorry. I'm saying too much. How long is this podcast?
No. Yeah. 3 hours. Keep going. No.
I'm like sweating. I need to take off my sweater.
Preach it, Katie. It is just, it's concerning. Yeah. I mean, and I think it's, and I'll let you, I know you're about to talk, Brittany, but using critical thinking within our theology, I think, is what I love about your book, that you're trying to encourage people to do that. And what were you going to say, Brittany? Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I get so excited on these podcasts because I feel like Katie and I could just like go sit and have coffee and I could ask her a million questions. But what she's saying is just like making me think about like this redemption narrative in general and who we're trying to identify ourselves with. And when it's like the last will be first, or like those that suffer will triumph, it's like we have to convince ourselves that we are the last of these, or we are the ones that are suffering, so that we can see like the potential power, because we're thinking about like power and triumph of this world, but not something that's beyond this world, right? And so I think like this is why these like suffering narratives are so powerful, and why this idea of like a scarcity mindset is so powerful, because it's like the minute we can convince ourselves that we're the ones in the low position of power, like it starts to mentally justify some sort of redemption narrative for us, but our time scale feels wrong. Right? Like we're looking for like some sort of power reclaiming, some sort of domination, some sort of triumph in this moment, in this world, rather than seeing that as like the peace that we will have with Jesus Christ, like in heaven. And so I'd just be curious, like, I'd be curious what you all think, but I'd be curious what Katie thinks, like, because I see that being such a powerful motivator of people. The minute you make them feel like they are the one that is suffering, they are the one that is left out, or they are the one that is like the least of these in these moments, that can often justify mentally for them some sort of balance writing, right? And we talk about this, like the just world phenomenon, and how like dehumanization perpetuates more dehumanization. Like there's just like some really interesting dynamics that seem to me to make it feel like the more you can spend this, like, yeah, I'm the one that's being
Yeah.
harmed. I'm the one that doesn't have enough. I'm the one who's being, pushed out of spaces, and there's not going to be enough jobs for me, and there's not going to be enough of this, and there's not going to be enough of that. That's what seems to motivate people to like reclaim something in a really like domineering way that
Mhm.
isn't actually at all like the vision that Christ gave for us.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is like the war on Christmas, you know how every year like the Starbucks cup get the
Yeah.
spotlight because like I don't know, became holiday cups or
Yeah.
there's a war on
Right.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Right.
So one of the things I teach this course called The Christian Faith for freshmen, and the second lecture that I give, I do statistics globally. So like we'll do a little quiz here. Okay. Of the major religions, I'll just give you three. Let's say Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism, largely populated countries. India, huge, right? Uh, which one's the biggest? What are the most majority of people around the world? What do you think?
Christian.
Christians.
What do you
Am I
think, Brittany?
Yes. Yeah, sure. Christians.
Okay, it's Christians. It's Christians, not by a ton, but like more than a third of the population globally are Christians. In America, it's like 80, 90%. If you go back a number of years, it's always between 70 and 90%. Even as like the non-Christian group grows and Christianity declines in the last 10 years, Christianity is still the biggest. It's like 60% compared to 30%. And those 30% aren't another religion. Every other religious group is 1% or less. Second largest group are agnostics or atheists, or they're just like, meh, like I don't really want to affiliate. I'm kind of like spiritual, but not religious. So like there's no war on Christians or Christmas. Like there's statistically, there's just numerically we're the majority. We're the largest power, most powerful group. So like, but the idea, the feeling of there's a war on Christmas, like you said, it's a huge motivator.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone's trying to stop me, and I'm the rebellion. There's like rebellion is a big motivator, psychology says, which I'm finding in my teenage boys. So like if you feel like you need to fight for something, like, oh, and then it's like, well, we need more power. Like they're trying to take away our power. How do you get power in a country? Politics. How do you get power in politics? You form groups that have a lot of money, and then you elect each other. And then it's less about discerning what's best for the country or citizenship of Americans, and it's more about power. And then you get power by keeping your group tight and solid and voting together. No one dissent. Everybody vote together. Don't think, right? Turn off your brain, just vote together. And they're using religion as a way to consolidate that group. Like if you're with us, you're a Christian, you're all these things. So I think we're seeing that right now every day when you turn on the news, like the political religious reinforcement. I mean, in the language that's appropriate to use is Christian nationalism, which
Mm-hmm.
James Tallarico is getting in trouble for and other people with defining it. But that's what's happening is having a Christian nation as Christianity as a political body that has force, and that has how you can like consolidate power.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's pretty scary,
Yeah, it
Sorry,
is.
I don't know who's listening to your
To say
podcast.
the
You
least.
can bleep that out if you want.
No, it's great. I mean, that narrative that they push about Christians being, pushed out of this country is a very powerful narrative that people listen to, and they don't look at the actual they don't look at the numbers and the reality of it all.
Well, and there's like there's a layer of race to that too, right? Which like again, do what you want with this. But to like name it as white Christian nationalism, I think is important because
Mhm.
it is a majority of white folks that are really in that space.
Yeah.
But also there's psych research that shows that when you like anticipate for people that the ethnic and racial demographics of our country are shifting, they double down on some of these ideologies. And so when they start to feel like white folks are losing ground and that we are going to have a more racially and ethnically diverse country, it has that same scarcity mindset, like activation, where people start to cling to some of these kind of power dynamics. And so I think that all of this is related to I feel like I'm being pushed out, right? Or I feel fearful that I'm not going to have the freedom or ability to live my life in the way that I'm currently living it, whatever. And so I think fear is like it's understandably motivating for people. But I think that there's lots of dynamics to it. I think there's the religious component to it, but I also think that there are racial and ethnic components to it as well, that have been really well fleshed out in the literature that I think are interesting to name,
Yeah. So
happening at this non-conscious level.
yeah, it affects our generosity, right? Our generous spirit, which
And yeah, how much we stereotype other people, how much we distance ourselves from other people, all of these things, right? So it's like, why on earth would like the minute you just think like white people are more likely to be in the minority in the future, is that license to start to discriminate against other people more? And you're not aware that it's happening, but that's the process that's going on underneath the surface. And so there's something to that, I think, to pay attention to.
yeah.
That generous neighbor love should extend regardless of if you're the only person in a group or if you're the majority of a person in a group.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do we solve the problem? One of the things I saw that was, you offer some great suggestions, and you have a website that even gives a freebie challenge calendar to people. So I think that when we talk about topics that are big like this, I mean, it's hard to say, okay, well, what's mine to do here?
Yeah.
So I know, Marcia, too, you were really interested in the campus experiment there. I don't know if you'd like to weave that in.
I did. I'll admit, I listened to a little bit of y'all's interview on the Worthy podcast. And you were talking on there, and I think it's in the book too, a little bit about how, these college kids are forced to live like they can't just go down and visit a homeless shelter for 2 hours and feel like they did their thing, and then they can leave when they want to.
Right.
They're around this tent city, right? I don't know how long the tent city was there.
3 months.
3 months. So they're having to engage, or at least be aware. They can't really get away from these homeless people and this demographic of people that some of them probably have a preconceived bias against. Is that correct to say? You mentioned something about how maybe one might connect with another one, and they feel connected and want to help, and they feel this bond with this one, but they can still only think, okay, this person is the exception to the group. I thought that was so fascinating. It didn't necessarily change their feeling about the entire group. And I think that we do that on a day. Like, we might say, well, this is my Democrat neighbor, but they're nice. It doesn't make you think, oh, maybe I should reconsider my bias towards the entire group. And, we hear all of these stereotypical, dehumanizing, this language that's going on. So, like, what can be a step towards overcoming that hump, from just, okay, this one person is the exception to the rule?
Yeah, that was a long and hard fought like conclusion for us to get to that point, because different levels of data and like different data methods point you in different directions. So if you just look at the qualitative data, it seems like, wow, students are like completely transformed by this experience of engaging with somebody experiencing homelessness. If you look at the group level perceptions, you're like, crickets, like not a whole lot happening here.
Yeah.
And so it took a long time for Katie and I to get to a place where we could really articulate that clearly, that what we think is happening is they really were transformed by that one interaction, and they think of that one person differently, but that just wasn't sufficient to extend to the entire group. And so this like exceptionalism happens in all areas, right? Just like the Democratic example that you gave. And one of the things that social psychology points to is like, it seems obvious, like in retrospect, but like you need to engage with multiple members of that group. Like engaging with one individual experiencing homelessness, or one Democrat, or one person who's Buddhist, right, is not going to be enough, like to overcome your stereotypes. But it requires multiple interactions with multiple members of that group in friendly settings that don't have a power dynamic. And so there's all these criterion, right? And it's like, how many of us in these in-group, out-group dynamics really check off all of those boxes for multiple group members, like very rarely, right? And so I think that's one of the reasons why it's so challenging is because it really takes a lot of time and energy and effort to be able to not just like happen to have one neighbor that has one particular disposition you don't normally encounter, but to intentionally seek out multiple group members to have that same realization over and over again. Wow, like I've met 10 people that identify with this group, and now, right? And it's just going to take a number of encounters is one of the key criteria there,
Yeah.
and a number of encounters that again don't have the power dynamic. One of my students in my class the other night, we were talking about this book actually, and she was sharing how she was interacting with somebody who regularly works with individuals experiencing homelessness, who was just like espousing like incredibly dehumanizing and stereotypical language about them. And she was just like, they interact with so many people experiencing homelessness. But they always do it in a power dynamic where they're in control and they are trying to manage somebody's behavior, but it's never an equal setting. And so it's not just proximity and it's not just like numerosity, it's also equality in those interactions and being open to being changed by those people as much as we hope that they're open to be changed by us. So
Yeah, that's where emotional intelligence comes in, I think. And I think that's often the root of so many issues. You can't have relationships with people without emotional intelligence. You can just have kind of transactionships at best.
Yeah, I think also like I think of this a little bit as like language immersion programs, how like if you want to, I lived in Germany and I had stereotypes about Germans, and then I lived there and I was like, somebody told me like don't trust anyone's opinion of Germany who's lived here less than 6 months or more than 6 years, because less than 6 months you're like so uncomfortable you kind of don't really know what's going on, and more than 6 years you're so comfortable that you like take things for granted. But I think if you want to be changed by a group of people, you like are kind of with them together in a way that you're kind of like a little uncomfortable and but open to being surprised and curious and being vulnerable so that they get to know you. And then no one comes home from a language immersion trip unchanged. You like you come home and everyone's like you're different, or you're like wow, I see the world differently. I think that's the goal of like when Christ asks us to be transformed by the renewing of our minds, or that's Paul, not Jesus, but like that's the type of transformation where it's like wow, I recognize now like all the stereotypes I had about people experiencing homelessness. And now I just don't interact the same way. I've changed. It's different now. And when I hear things that used to be okay with me, it's not okay with me
Mm-hmm.
anymore. And I'm still working on ways to speak up or do something different or make a plan for when I see someone, how I want to help. But I think it's like a one-off things like, oh, that was so fun. And then you kind of can go home and feel like,
Yeah.
oh, it was amazing. But when you're really changed, you kind of feel that dissonance. In the future interactions where you're like, oh, I'm not okay with this anymore. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you talk a lot in the book about, how proximity does change perception. And like I've been a touring musician for the last 25 years, and I've been really blessed to have been able to travel all over the world. And my perception blew up, about what all the stereotypes are like, oh, the French all hate us. They're lovely. I love my French friends. Or they would say, be careful over in Japan. They wear masks because the air quality is so bad. They all wear masks. And I'm like, really? And then I get over there and they're like, no, they actually wear masks over there because if they have a cold, they don't want to spread it to other people. Like in America, we're so used to like, we wear masks to protect ourselves. They wear masks in Japan so that they don't spread it to other people. Like, what a concept.
Yeah.
And
So generous.
it's so generous. And there's no perfect country. Like everyone has their issues, right? But to go to all of these different countries and see the beauty and of the different cultures, and understanding that so much of my perception was stereotypical and just plain wrong. um but let's go back to your book about proximity. Like when you're going to take your first step towards, okay, who is my neighbor? and what's the first little step? What's the closest part? I mean, are you talking about like literally your next door neighbor, like walking over and trying to get to know them, or where would you say start with that?
We have stories in the book about our literal next door
Yeah.
neighbor. Um, one thing we
I'd
talk
say
about,
start 3 doors down because that's the person you're probably less likely to be.
I mean, I think the first thing to notice is like the architecture or the layout of your neighborhood. So I love there's a Brittany brings in a study on like if you have a long driveway or you have a big yard, like you're physically less close to people. And so one thing is to simply just start to notice like how is my neighborhood set up? And where do I interact with people? And so one activity we have people do in the book, if you want to do it, it's just kind of fun. And I actually did it with my fourth grade Sunday school class. I had them just draw a map of your neighborhood and like, what are the names of all the people? Like, do you know them? And what do you know about them? Do you know really superficial things? Or are they the neighbor where like their kids are in your house and your kids are in their house all the time? And then start to ask like, well, why don't I know these people? You know, like where I live in my neighborhood, I live in a neighborhood built in the 1920s. Our houses are like literally 10 feet apart. I can look at the silhouette of my next door neighbor as he pulls down his pants to go to the bathroom.
Oh,
Like
great.
we are in each other's business. And at the same time, there's like there's challenges with that, and there's
Yeah.
really lovely things with that. Like nobody has a garage big enough for a lawnmower. So it used to be my friend Amy had the neighborhood lawnmower because we have these tiny yards, and now I have the neighborhood lawnmower. But like it means we interact a lot and we actually help each other a lot. And I actually have no problem asking people like, hey, my kid's got a soccer tournament, but my other kid needs to stay home to play frisbee. Well, can he spend the night at your house? Like there's 3 neighbors I would ask, at the drop of the hat. But that hasn't been true in every neighborhood.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to not be true. But sometimes the architecture or the layout, city layout of where we live, shapes us in ways we're not even conscious of. Another thing we did was like draw a map, like a Google map of your neighborhood, like your commute, like and how you commute. If you're in your car, windows up, you're probably not going to talk to anybody. But if you walk your kids to school or you bike to work or you take a train or a bus, you're more likely to talk to people. But also research shows you end up being happier if you talk to people. So you can ride a bus with like headphones on and your computer out, or you can sit there and just like talk to whoever's around you. And they did a study where they found people who did that when they got off the bus, they were happier, even compared to the people who were like, I got so much work done. Those people weren't happier.
The person that was talking was happier, or the person that was being talked to was happier, or both?
Actually, both. Yeah, they find that like it improves well-being for both people. But and in different ways that they've looked at that, not all from one study, but that usually what stops us from doing that is like a misperception that other people don't want to talk to us, which is funny because it seems like that might have been where you're going. Like that other person couldn't possibly have been happier, right? Like I just bugged them for 10 minutes on the bus. But we have this misbelief.
Some of us are introverts, but
yeah. Well, I feel you on that. I'm there with you. But I still find that this is true that when I do push myself to like talk to people, I usually really do enjoy the interaction.
Yeah,
but I think that barrier might be even stronger for folks who are more introverted, that other folks don't want to engage with us. So yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And I think we just have like increasingly the ability to curate who we do and do not interact with. And so we're reducing the likelihood that we would ever encounter somebody that's different from us in a really meaningful way.
Good
So
point.
outside of just like extending your bubble a little bit further in your neighborhood or in your community, it's like what opportunities are you really giving yourself to encounter folks you wouldn't normally or intentionally encounter in your everyday life?
Yeah, that was a big challenge I saw.
Yeah.
And there was, really look at what you do on a daily basis. And since I got a dog that I walk, that has changed significantly.
Right?
So,
yeah. Just because you're
more
out
opportunity. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So everybody get a dog.
Yes. Dogs, babies, moms are out walking like their babies all the time. Like these things where we're just out and about on the streets, like in ways that we don't normally do that. Because otherwise, like Katie was saying, like you get in your car in your garage, if you have a big garage, and you never see your neighbors, right? Like in Seattle where we park on the street, it's like I watched and talked to all my neighbors while we were loading up our kids, but now my car fits in my garage in Texas, which is glorious, but also I see my neighbors way less because of that. right?
True.
So you could never see anybody outside of your house and like the people you are intentionally trying to see. If you don't think about, can I challenge myself to change my routine in a way that I have the opportunity to encounter people that Jesus puts on my path instead of
Yeah.
just that I put on my path.
One of the great things about COVID was, I mean, our neighborhood changed during COVID because people were out walking, like you're stuck
Yeah.
in your house, right? And so everyone's like, let's go take a walk. And you're just bumping into people. Of course, you're talking from a safe 6 feet, 6 feet away. But I mean, it really did change the dynamic of our neighborhood in COVID because people were getting out and meeting each other on the street and just going, hey, you're desperate to even introverts like me, like I want to talk to someone besides my husband. I love my husband, but it was just fun to have those interactions, and that was one little positive from COVID, I guess.
Totally. Well, and people like my sister and her husband, I think I might talk about them in the book, but like their whole neighborhood, like they put camping chairs out like
Yep.
every day on like the end of their driveways, and all their neighbors would like sit out and hang out on their street. And like that's how they would interact, but that wasn't a dynamic necessarily that they had before. And so I do think it created kind of some realization that we need the people around us and we need to engage more frequently than we actually do normally. So.
Yeah. Well, this has been a lovely conversation. We literally could talk for 3 hours, I'm sure. I'd love for you to talk about how people can find out more information. In particular, you have that lovingbetter.net website. So explain what's out there if people want to go and check that out.
Yeah, the website is probably the greatest place for folks to go if they want resources. Katie's put together an awesome discussion guide. So for small groups looking to like go through this, I mean, there's already loads of like questions and living faithfully sections in the book that I think will prompt conversation, but this discussion guide will help you go deeper. So you can download that for free, or the challenge calendar. And then we have an Instagram, which is Loving Better 2025. And people can jump on that as well if they're interested to connect with us. We're like trying to be Instagrammers, but really like not either of us. We're moms, we're busy, we've got a lot going on. So but we would be happy to find people there. And when we do have time, we post some stuff there. But if they want the resources, the website's the best place to go. And then Katie and I both have our own websites and also, affiliations with universities where people could find us too if they're interested in our academic work. So
that's awesome. Well, the book is called Love Your Neighbor: How Psychology Can Enliven Faith and Transform Community. It's a really great book. I love the fact that you also have some resources if people want to do this, like book clubs. I might do this for the little book club with our girlfriend community, and then you've got the daily challenge that people can download. So I really encourage everybody to check this out. It got some amazing stuff. I love that you have in each chapter you have a section, and maybe you guys wrote separately, but you have the psychology section, the thinking theologically, and then the living faithfully. So you talk about it from a psychological the topic from a psychological point, from a theological point, and then also how to just live it out. And that's what we all need to do. So thank you, ladies, for your work and for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been fun.
We're cheering you on.
Thank you so much.
This episode has been brought to you by God and My Girlfriends Ministries. If you're looking for a faith-based community where everyone is accepted, all beliefs are welcome, and no judgment, check out godandmygirlfriendsministries.org, where you can find more information about our book clubs, both online and in person, upcoming retreats, and all the events in your area. You can also find out about one of our favorite things that we do, our Single Moms Christmas Blessing Ministry. So go check out godandmygirlfriendsministries.org. We would love to have you a part of our community.